but right now he is in the middle of covering college football. David, what's up, my man?
Hey, not a whole lot. Just enjoying what's been a wonderful college football season so far. It's been especially great for you guys down there in Mississippi.
It's been really good so far. So, bigger picture question. Somebody sent us a message earlier today on the C Spire text line that says, yes, it's been great, but when it's all said and done and the dust clears, we're going to end up with the same four teams in the playoff. Do you buy that, or is this a year where something weird happens and maybe we get a little fresh blood at the end of the season?
Oh, I definitely think there's a pretty good chance we'll get at least three of the four end up being predictable and blue bloods. But it feels like the journey to get there is going to feature some drama. In fact, it already has. All you got to do is look back on Saturday and see how close Georgia came to losing what would have been an absolute stunner at Missouri. And that game starts out the night as being probably number 4 or 5 on the pecking order for most fans who are figuring out what they're going to watch. And then it turns out to be a must-see TV type of situation. And then you got Alabama struggling, at Texas as well. That they were vulnerable there, and Ohio State getting tested week 1 against Notre Dame. So those three, who most people view as ironclad at the top, all three of them have already been tested. And so I think ultimately I would pick all three of those to make the playoff, and that's kind of lame. And I'm fatigued of that as well, which is why I'm an advocate of expansion. But I at least appreciate the fact that they're injecting some drama into what feels like an inevitability with some of these teams near the top of the rankings.
David, the way this season has gone, and you mentioned it just a second ago, makes me so excited for the 12-team playoff. And look, if we go to that model and we still end up with the same 3, 4, 5 teams kind of in the semifinals and championship game, I'm okay with that. But the argument that people continue to throw out about a 12-team playoff devaluing the regular season makes me wonder what those people have functioning inside their skull between their ears, because it makes no sense to me whatsoever.
Yeah, the thing is, it would make so many more games have such higher stakes throughout late October into November, when in the 4-team format, you pretty much know that you're down to 6 or maybe 7 who have a chance by the time November rolls around. I mean, there's still going to be 25 or 30 teams who feel like they have a shot to make the 12-team playoff come November. And then there will be a whole lot more who are trying to play the role of spoiler as well when you have these rivalry games toward the end of the season. So I think that makes it fun. And then there is still something to play for if you're one of those top 3 or 4 teams who pretty much know that you're getting in, because you want to have a bye. You want to have a home field advantage. And those are things that the 12-team proposal would have. And so you would still have incentive to put your best foot forward, even the last game or 2 of the year.
David, same question for the 2 games that were in Mississippi this past weekend. Let's do Mississippi State, Texas A&M first. Who did you take more away from the game about Texas A&M or about Mississippi State based on what you saw?
Mississippi State, absolutely, really without a doubt. And we know that Texas A&M, their offense is weak. It's not a good Jimbo Fisher offense, not by any stretch. No Jameis Winston out there playing quarterback for the Aggies. But I've just been continued to be impressed with the Mississippi State defense. Because, look, when you play the style of offense that Mississippi State does, the air raid style, defense sometimes can be forgotten. And it's not necessarily easy to coordinate a stingy defense when so much of the emphasis is on the offensive side of the ball. And I think Zach Arnett is quietly one of the more underrated coordinators in the country. And every time you look up, it's like there's a Mississippi State player swarming to the football. And that's a really good unit for the Bulldogs, I think. And so that's probably what stood out to me, impressed me the most. They obviously they excelled in the special teams. So I think there's maybe a misconception out there with Mike Leach and this Mississippi State team that, it's Will Rogers and it's the air raid. Sure, maybe that's what people know them for, but I think their defense is really good, and the special teams obviously popped in a big way for them on Saturday.
Same question for the Ole Miss-Kentucky game, where Ole Miss came out on top in a close game. Did you take more away from that game about Ole Miss or about Kentucky?
Yeah, Ole Miss, they come out as victors in a game against a top 10 opponent, And Kentucky really kind of they were who I thought they were in that game, but Ole Miss hadn't played anybody. Yeah, Kentucky had gone on the road and beaten Florida. And say what you will about the Gators, but it's still impressive to go on the road in the SEC and win in an environment like that. So the Wildcats have been tested. I felt like I knew who they were. Ole Miss had not been tested, at least not in my opinion. I know Tulsa is a decent American team, but this was far and away the biggest test that the Rebels had faced. And the fact that they won it with their defense, the fact that they won it on the ground, again, it's countering these perceptions nationally about Mike Leach and Lane Kiffin, that they're offensive, passing-oriented teams. And you go look at Ole Miss right now, they're in the top 10 in the country in both rushing offense and then total defense as well. And neither of those things are maybe things that you would expect from Ole Miss.
Looking ahead to this weekend, it appears as if Arkansas is a little bit of a walking wounded team at this point. Do the Razorbacks have a chance in Starkville on Saturday?
Oh, yes. I never count out this Arkansas team. I mean, they showed us who they were after falling down, 4 touchdowns against Alabama. I mean, people were leaving that game in the first half. They were exiting the stadium because they didn't think there was any hope. And Arkansas managed to come back and make that a game. And, of course, some of that may have had to do with the fact that Bryce Young was not playing. That certainly helped, but it still took a certain level of belief, a certain level of talent, and just fortitude, culture, all these things we associate with Sam Pittman, for them to get back into that ballgame. And they fell short in the end, but I thought they showed us who they were by the fact that they battled back into that game. And the SEC West this year, I just don't think you can count anyone out. And I think Arkansas's got that kind of culture, that kind of buy-in, that they're going to bring it every week. So, I mean, that's a big number right now. I think it's around 8. Arkansas is a big underdog this week, and honestly, I think they kind of got them right where they want them. Like, I think this is the kind of situation where Arkansas thrives because
but don't you think the big question is whether or not KJ Jefferson is going to play?
Oh yeah, I mean, obviously we'll see. It seems like every Monday press conference yesterday with a quarterback that had any sort of injury situation, it was he's day to day. He's day to day. I guess that's just kind of the de facto answer now for quarterbacks. We don't want to tip our hand. Yeah, that's a huge part of it. So we'll see. We'll see what ends up happening there. But I'm still a believer in the Razorbacks. I'll say that.
Last one I want to ask you about, Tennessee heading to Baton Rouge. It's been a long time since those two teams have played each other in Baton Rouge. We still see that with this East-West unbalanced schedule thing, and hopefully that's going to be fixed when the new SEC scheduling model comes out. Everything feels like this should be Tennessee with the way they've played. And yet, we look at LSU and go, I don't know if they're that good, but Brian Kelly's got them 4-1. What do you anticipate in Baton Rouge on Saturday?
Yeah, I think people are seeing the 8 next to Tennessee's name, and maybe the expectations there are getting a little out of hand. I mean, I'm an alum, used to cover the team. I've got a couple of group chats going with diehard fans, and they're all getting on this bandwagon of, well, anything less than 10-2 is a disappointment this season. And I'm like, guys, you need to hold on and pump the brakes a little bit here because this is year 2 under Josh Heupel after he walked into a horrendous situation that he inherited from Jeremy Pruitt. And now you're acting like you're going to be disappointed if Tennessee doesn't go on the road and beat a ranked LSU team. I mean, I understand they're favored. I understand they're capable of winning the game. But I think what we're seeing with LSU is a team that every week is getting better. And maybe nationally they were tuned out a bit after losing to Florida State. But Brian Kelly has this team getting better every single week. And those wins over Mississippi State and Auburn are nothing to laugh at because anytime you get a win in the SEC West this season, it generally means you're doing something right. So this is going to be a tough spot for Tennessee, especially when you look at the way their defense sets up. I mean, Anthony Richardson just went crazy on them. And I know Jalen Daniels is not a big-time thrower, but he might be able to have some success through the air against that Tennessee defense.
If I said you have to bet $100 of your own money for Tennessee to either go 10-2 or better or worse than 10-2, which side would you take?
I would go worse. I think there's a
Really?
pretty good chance they slip up against somebody other than Alabama and Georgia. Look, they still have to play Kentucky. They still have to play LSU this week. And then, look at Missouri and how much better their defense is from a year ago. So there's just no guarantees. The thing that scares me a little bit about Tennessee is just how reliant they are on Hendon Hooker.
That's true.
You could say it's like, we've talked about this before, but it's kind of like how reliant Ole Miss was on Matt Corral last season. And the Rebels have done a phenomenal job to kind of move past that and become a complete team this year. But we saw in the bowl game, sort of how things went when he was not out there. And that's how things would be for Tennessee if Hendon Hooker, heaven forbid, had to miss a game due to injury. So the maximum potential that is there for Tennessee to go 10-2. It's within the realm of possibility, but it's far from a given at this point.
Great stuff.